Hi, friends. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm your host, Matt Hinkle, and tonight I want to tell you to stop ruining good hunting spots. We're going to talk about little things that all of us do that mess up our best hunting spots, and I'm going to talk to you tonight about how to avoid doing that.
Welcome to the From My Stand podcast with Matt Hinkle. Whether you are an avid hunter, a novice, or someone interested in the sport, Matt has a unique perspective to share. Sit back, relax, and kick your boots up as Matt shares what he's seeing from his stand.
First of all, I want to welcome all of our viewers, but especially I want to welcome our new viewers. Just in the last week, we've added close to 200 new subscribers. We've got tons of new viewers, and we are so happy to have all of you on this channel with us. And so I'm honored that you would watch and that you would subscribe. If you're still a viewer and you have not yet subscribed, I would just simply ask you to subscribe. It's a simple act that you can do that will increase the reach of this channel. And I'm not even asking you to do it necessarily for me, but if you found some value to this channel by doing the simple act of subscribing, you can increase and broaden the reach of this channel. And, maybe it will help somebody else the way it has helped you. But anyway, we are glad that you're here today, and I want to welcome you to today's episode. So we all know the importance of finding the right spot to hunt, finding the right tree to put our tree stand in, finding the right spot to to put our blind. And that is very important. I have done tons of episodes on scouting and trying to talk about how to find the right spot, because that's what every hunter uh, dreams of, is finding that perfect tree, finding that perfect blind location. But I will tell you this, just as important as finding the right tree or the right location for a blind is finding the right way to approach it, finding the right way to get to it. I have known guys who um, find good places to hunt. There's sign everywhere. They hang a stand. They put out a camera, and there's tons of sign there. And when they're not there, the cameras are very active, and there's tons of deer on camera. The camera's just going crazy. And yet, when they're there, nothing ever happens. And normally that's because they're not approaching that location the right way. They are not um, they are not approaching, and they're not getting to that exact spot the exact right way. So tonight we want to talk a little bit about that. So let me give you some things to think about. First of all, where does your hunt begin? Well, I'm going to tell you this. Your hunt begins at your vehicle, or if you're camping, it begins at your camper or your tent, or just wherever it is you're staying. When you are in the proximity of where your stand is or your blind is, you've got to really think about noise and human activity in that area. When I was a kid and I hunted with my grandpa and my cousin and his son, and these are all very highly accomplished hunters. Like, I can remember being a kid in deer camp, and I wasn't allowed to slam a door. I wasn't allowed to fiddle around with candy wrappers. Once we were in the proximity of our hunting area, you got quiet. And so, just be very, very mindful. Once you are in your hunting area, even if you're not to your stand or you're blind, you got to really, really be careful about noise and just any kind of sounds or activity that is not normal to that hunter's world. I've been around guys that, their stand's not necessarily a bad spot, but they just, um, they're making too much noise, slamming doors, their cell phones ringing, they're talking at full volume. And that just alerts deer that something's going on. And especially intelligent, mature does and bucks, they don't give you a whole lot of grace on stuff like that. And so just from the moment whatever it is, if you're driving to your hunting area or you're staying in a camp nearby, just be really super mindful of that. I've done little things like just parking further down the road so that, and then walking back the road. That way, deer near the road, but also near where I'm hunting, won't catch on to my presence. So just little things like that. Now, I don't use a script or a teleprompter, but I do have some notes down in this little book, and so I'm going to be glancing down at that every once in a while. Uh, Also, while you're getting to your stand, think about any and all noise on the way to the stand or once you get there. Before you ever leave your car or leave your camp, I would just constantly be checking your pack, make sure that things aren't loose and jingling around, car keys, things like that, just jingling around in your pack or in your pockets. Sounds like that are not natural in the woods, and they will alert deer to your presence. So just be very mindful of any kind of non-natural sounds. Once you get into the woods, um, zippers are really bad. Velcro is really bad. Um, Metallic sounds are really bad. So just be real mindful of things like that from the time you leave your vehicle, the entire walk in, and even once you get to your stand, just be as quiet as you can. I've been heavily influenced by the Wenzel brothers through the years. I think Gene and Barry Wenzel are two of the best hunters I've ever known of. They've written a lot of books and put a lot of outdoor media out there, and so I've just learned a lot from the stuff that they have put out there. And I think it was Barry Wenzel that I heard this from. But he said that once the leaves got down, he would like go to his stand but take a leaf rake, and he would rake leaves uh, and sticks all to the side, and he would make himself like a 4 foot wide bare dirt path from camp all the way to his stand. And so that way, from that point on, every time he walked in there for the rest of the hunting season, he was walking into quiet. And honestly, I don't go that far, but that's not a bad idea because again, every edge you can give yourself, these mature does and mature bucks, you're not allowed many mistakes with them. Really, you're not allowed hardly any mistakes with them. So anything you can do to give yourself an edge, um, you need to do that. Okay. Make sure you don't skyline yourself. Okay. Try not to walk on the very spine of a ridge or pop over the very top of a hill. Just uh, deer don't do that if they can help it. And they know why they don't do that because it makes them more visible and vulnerable to predators. And a lot of natural predators don't do that either. So it's not a good idea to skyline yourself. If you've got to get from one end of the ridge to the other, don't walk the spine. Don't walk the very top, even in the dark. Because I'm telling you, even in the dark, they may not know what you are, but they know there's some kind of a two-legged upright figure that's moving along the spine of that ridge. And any deer that are just down below the ridge, which is normally where they are, they're going to be able to look up and see, even in the dark, they can see that form, that the form of you going along the spine of that. So, don't let yourself get skylined if you can help it. Again, these are just suggestions. These are things um, to uh, to be mindful of. Never go through a bedding area. Never go through a security area when you're getting to that stand. Now you should know where their security areas are if you're hunting an area. You should know where their bedding area is if you're hunting there to begin with, and stay out of that. Don't go walking through bedding areas to get to your stand. Make sure that you've identified those areas and it is not part of your plan to go walking through that because a lot of times we always think of the other guy being pressured. We when we talk about deer being pressured, we're always thinking about, well, it's somebody else that's pressuring the deer, and we never really think about the fact that we are pressured too. Every time I go in the woods, I am pressured. Now I want to be low pressure, I want to be low impact, but if I go busting through their security zone, if I go blowing through their bedding area on my way to my stand or on my way to my blind or on my way out, then, the party's over. I'm gonna that security area isn't going to be security anymore because there's a human presence in it. So do not make sure that you know where their escape zones are, where their bedding areas are, where their safety areas are, and don't go blowing through those. A lot of guys have really what I would call a good stand, but they don't have a good approach to their stand. And so they sit on what in theory should be a good stand, but it never is. It never yields anything because of just little things like what we're talking about. Now, here is something that we're not going to totally solve or hash out completely tonight in this episode. We probably need to do its own episode on this subject. But when should you arrive at your stand? I grew up, I started hunting in the early 90s, and I can remember all the outdoor media at that time, the magazines, the TV shows, the videos. They would talk about getting into your stand like, I mean, minimum half hour before dark. Some of them said an hour before dark. I mean, getting in your stand that early. Um, Staying like a half hour after dark, an hour after dark. And, so when I started hunting, that's the kind of thing that I did. Now, I've kind of tweaked that approach through the years. And you say, well, Matt, when do you get into your stand in the morning? When do you get in there in the evening? When do you get out in the morning? When do you get out in the evening? Well, I'll just tell you this. It totally depends on the situation, and it varies from stand to stand. It varies depending on what time of year it is. But you do need to put some thought and some strategy into when you're going to get there. Here's the deal. I try most of the time, I have a pretty quiet approach planned for my morning stand. And let me put it this way. The less familiar I am with the stand, the earlier I leave. But once I get kind of a handle on a stand and I feel comfortable in the dark, because I don't use a flashlight. If I were on public land in gun season, I would use a flashlight. I might use a flashlight even on public land in bow season because safety first. But it, I try to not use a light. Most of the time, our eyes do pretty good. They adjust. There's enough natural light that you're not completely blind in the dark. But once I've hunted a stand a few times and I kind of got my way in and out established and I can do it in the dark pretty quietly, I don't see the need to get there super early. I have found that if I get there about 15 minutes before first light and everything goes well, okay, that by the time I get in that stand, the birds have settled down. If there's any squirrels around, they've settled down. The woods have kind of settled down after about 15 minutes, and everything's pretty calm by first light. Now, here's what I would say. So, my answer is about 15 minutes before, as long as you can get in there quiet and as long as it's not high super pressure. Okay. If you're, if it's gun season and I'm hunting an area where there's going to be a lot of gun hunters, I want to try to beat everybody to the punch. Okay. So I'm going earlier and earlier, and I really can't answer that question. It just depends. I'm going to get there early enough to where I beat everybody. Okay. And I'm in the woods first and I'm settled down because then I kind of feel like I have the best chance of people running deer to me. And I've been there, I'm hunkered down, I'm ready. But in a perfect world, all things being equal, I think 15, 20 minutes before daylight, it lets the woods kind of settle down. Remember, deer follow natural cues. They pay attention to what squirrels are doing. They pay attention to what birds are doing. And if the woods are all kind of in an uproar because a person has just walked through, that deer, he's not going yet. He's going to wait till things settle down. So you need to get there early enough to let things settle down. And I'll tell you this, you want to be in your stand at first minute of legal light, if at all possible, because I've said in some earlier episodes that I really believe a possible time to get a good buck is right at first light. Now, I know you can get them at other times, but first light has been pretty good to us through the years on more mature bucks. So anyway, I would be there by first light, and I'd get there early enough to for everything to settle down. Then I always try to stay in the stand until about 11 o'clock in the morning. But again, it just depends. My most recent hunt, just a few days ago, um, at about 9 o'clock, there was no wind. About 9 o'clock, there started to be a little bit of a wind. By 10 o'clock, the wind had kind of changed a little bit. And by 10 o'clock, I felt the wind hit me on the back of the ear. I got out of there. The wind shifted. It was different. And I figured there was, it's all about calculated risk reward. And I figured me staying another hour could do more damage than good sitting there with the wind blowing wrong. So, you got to just make you got to make those decisions sometimes in real time. You got to make decisions in real time. But as a rule of thumb, I try to stay out till about 10:30, 11 o'clock. That policy's been pretty good to me through the years. And then in the afternoon, evening, the earlier you can get out, the better. But definitely before you expect deer activity. You don't want to get there right when the deer activity is starting. And I mean, that's just kind of common sense. I don't think I really need to tell you that. And then in the evening, if I don't have deer around me or I'm not hearing any deer around me, I leave as soon as it's too dark to shoot because I don't want to sit there and a deer come in. If there's no deer around me, I get out of there at the end of legal light. Now I stay until the last minute of legal light because anything can happen in the last few minutes. In fact, sometimes the most action-packed moments of the day are right before dark. So make sure you don't leave too early. But if there's no deer around you, get out of there. Also, I don't call very close to dark because sometimes they don't come in quickly. Sometimes a deer will take his time to come into a call, and you don't want to call a deer in and then you're leaving at the exact time he gets there. Then you could just spook a mature deer and you've educated him at that point. So I stay till last light, and if there's no deer, I get out of there. If there are deer around, I try to wait them out. I try to wait them out. Now, if they're around and it gets to a point where it's pitch black, I go ahead and get down because I can usually get down out of the stand pretty quiet. And at that point, I don't really think they know what I am. I have gotten out of a stand with deer less than 25 yards from me, and they didn't blow out of there. As long as they can't smell me, they don't. I don't think they always really know what you are in the dark as long as they don't get a whiff of you. So if there's deer around at last light, I'll wait till it gets really good, pitch black dark, and then I get down and I'll try to sneak out of there without spooking them. But I just try my best to not spook deer going in, going out, because again, these little things can ruin another. You can have a stand in the perfect tree, but if you don't give any thought to how I'm going to get there and how I'm going to get out of there and how I'm going to behave from the moment the hunt starts, you can ruin a really, really good stand by just not doing some of these things. So anyway, that's my thought for the day. That's my encouragement. We're right in the middle of bow season here in my home state, and I got off to a little bit of a late start this year. We've had some health problems in our household, and but those are kind of going away, and I'm starting to get out there. I do plan to hunt in about 2 days, but I hope your season is going well. I hope you're being safe out there, and I hope that you won't ruin a great stand with the wrong approach. Well, it looks like my fire is burning down over there. I'm going to have to go over there and stoke it out. Stoke it up. It's finally getting cold enough to build fires around here, so I need to go get that fire stoked up. Thanks for joining us tonight. I hope that this episode has been a help in some way. Have a great season. We'll see you next week. We're releasing new videos every Sunday at 9. So I hope you'll turn on your notifications and join us each and every week. It is always a joy to sit down and talk with you. Well, thanks for being with us today. I'm your host, Matt Hinkle, And that's how I see it from my stand.
Thank you for listening today. Be sure to tell your buddies and follow us on your favorite podcasting platforms. Y'all take care.